Back to Magic Gathering Strat. Today we are doing a Pauper walkthrough. We are doing a Pauper walkthrough of this deck. It's Soul Sisters, created by Deluxeicoff. And this Pauper walkthrough is going to be different, because normally I talk about the deck, I go through the cards. But today we have the deck's creator with us. So I'm now going to call Deluxeicoff and talk to him. And the first thing I'm going to talk to him about is why you should have 22 planes that are exactly the same. You click in show all versions and you see that all your planes are the same.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Welcome, Deluxeicoff.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to have you back. I think I'm gonna post this first, actually. So this is the first time you're here.
Oh, okay.
We're here to discuss the White Life or Soul Sisters deck that you tore up the dailies with in late August, early September last year.
Yeah, it seems like a eon ago. I called it that for just very obvious reasons. I hope nobody thinks I'm some Aryan radical, but
that
it was a way to differentiate it from other white weenie lists and such.
Yeah, it's very different from... you probably get the... people think that you're playing White Weenie, but you're not.
Right, and similar to... and maybe it was born from a adjacent strategy of liking, with Hexchant being kind of the low man and totem pole and being perceived to be an idiot. I mean, who plays a first turn Soul's Attendant in Pauper, right? So a lot of times you can kind of see that digital eye roll or the deep breath of like, this is going to be easy, and then pretty soon you're at 58 life and attacking for lethal with a Guardian's Pledge on everyone's back, and all of a sudden you're a luck sack.
I just loved the deck when I saw it. I immediately sleeved it up after I saw the first result with it, and it's just so much fun. It really is, and as long as islands aren't around, it's a damn good choice. There's a lot of times, as you mentioned in your YouTube videos, electricity obviously big thorn in the side. Realistically, a lot of times you can have a veteran armor out or even a Luma Thread field if your particular metagame is, or you're paranoid about that sort of thing. Which that's an interesting card, Luma Thread field, because a lot of times it can be a 2-for-1 because it will bait the curiosity of the person thinking, oh, what's this cool morphed creature, and they'll try to kill it, and then in response you flip it, all your guys get bigger and it costs them a card and your guys all improved. So those scenarios, that's about 50% of the time that will actually happen. So it's fair, or even funner is you slow play White Weenie and it's your only creature out, and they cast a Journey to Nowhere and you flip it, and then they have to target their own, like Skyfisher or something. That's hilarious. But of course, that's not in the list that I sent you, but that's a very valid sideboard option that might even be better than like I think the one I sent you had for Patrician Scorn against Hexchant, which is probably one of the most efficient enchantment removal spells, and since we're not running any, it might be worthy of a spot just because the hexproof deck has the ability to gain about as much life and hit so hard, so fast with fog effects that it's surprisingly hard to beat. Yeah, this card looks devastating for the hexproof deck, but
yeah, and it's amazing how many people I run into, mostly in casual or tournament practice room, not only twice in real tournaments, when I am piloting what I've been piloting lately, the Hexchant deck, that have never even heard of Patrician Scorn, and as a brewer first, that's one of my favorite things to do, is just enter keywords and see what comes up, and that whole cauldron scenario of the mad scientist sort of thing, and there's a lot of just really cool search words. One of my very favorite things to search for in all of Magic cards is the word rather than, or the words I should say. There's some incredibly powerful things that have rather than written in them.
Oh.
And that's a really neat way to get secret tech. I mean, I'm in front of it right now. I obviously let me set it to Pauper. And when I type it in, I'm trying to come up with a card. There was a event, there's a card that is probably better than Limit Red Field for that, and it is, let me see, Ramosian Rally from Icatian Masks, and it says, if you control the planes, you may tap an untapped creature rather than pay its mana cost, which is 3 and a white, pretty steep, and it's an instant. And it says, creatures you control get +1/1 until the end of turn. You talk about a surprise. Realistically, if I was playing a tournament again with this deck, I would probably play that even over the Patrician Scorn, because again, it's an active card. If the person's almost dead, I can cast that or cost 1 attack, or maybe hopefully a newly cast one for 1 mana. My whole team gets, an Anthem effect, a glorious Anthem effect. Stack it on top of a Guardian's Pledge. Now everybody's souped up on Goblin Bushwhacker steroids, all painted white. Good stuff. But yeah, that's something of a favorite thing of mine, is to try to look for those kind of key words, or rather than instead of. These are things that just shove metagames around, and it's just so great to have things to do when you're tapped out, or when there's no perceived resources on the board. Yep. And when I have to say the genesis of this deck was another green-white deck, and I'm sure everybody's seen it here and there.
The tokens deck, right?
Right. And again, it's one of those player style things. I went with a kind of a standard list, changed it a little bit. It had the Seedling Charm. It was a green-white. Gained tons of life, but I was looking at it thinking like, well, white has almost all of the complementary things here. In Suture Priest, anyway, it was devastating against Storm at the time. Do the Warrens very much was really popular. I mean, they with Benevolent Bodyguard out, they almost couldn't do anything, and you would just whittle them down. And with the addition of Guardian's Pledge, you would just, you could win on turn 4 or 5, so long as you drew it. And that also doubles as defense against things like, like trickery nowadays. So there's definitely ways around those cards, but with regards to tournament play, the flexibility it offers and the consistency of whittling it down to that one color really put it over the top for me. I mean, the Pallid Mycoderm is a great card, but everybody sees it coming. It sits there and sits there and it sits there, and then it has one little effect. Tournament experience, it's been much better to have the advantage. And I have to say, not many players can name their favorite mechanic. I can do so without any hesitation. I've given this a lot of thought. Retrace. Anybody at Wizards is listening to this, please come out with a block of more Retrace. That is, show me as someone who's never been mana flooded, and I'll probably introduce you to someone that's never played Magic, or Screwed. The neatest thing, here's a mono white, really low curve deck with 22 lands. Who does that? It's like, well, somebody that wants consistency to never mulligan, and then in the late game, every single time you draw a land, you get a 2/2 creature, and sometimes 8 to 16 life. It gets absurd, as you've seen.
Yeah, I might be wrong here, but I think this is a mechanic from another card game. That another card game have fixed the mana problem from Magic many a time with different success, and this is one of the fixes. And I'm surprised they haven't done this more, actually, because this really is it solves the flood problem.
Oh yeah, and
well.
It's two problems in one. You get your consistency early, and then when you're tired of lands, you just start pitching them, and it's wonderful against control. It's like, you want to counter that, really? Because they're put in such a tight vice grip, because half the time you cast Cenn's Enlistment, you're going to gain 8 to 10, 12 life, and so it's not only, you want to stop the aggro, but it's like, gosh, I don't know if I can kill this guy. It's like, I'm going to take a mighty big Kervix Torch to do this in, and hopefully he doesn't have strands. There's a lot of validity to that deck. But with this latest, the version that I sent you, obviously, as you noted in your YouTube video, Skyfishers, and you're very correct to assume that are sorely lacking in that first build, and air power against Fae and stuff. They're just such a catch-all in this deck, and often, sometimes late game, maybe you do return a land and then pitch and make more tokens with your Cenn's Enlistment. The neat thing about Cenn's Enlistment too is that that's the only graveyard. And so, does the person really risk, bringing in kind of a 1-to-1 answer and hope hoping they draw and it's not a dead card, because a lot of times games are won without Sense Enlistment. It's more of a late game, keep you alive, flood the board strategy. But
I noted you went down to 2 from 3.
yeah, I just it was a tough cut too, but with things like going back to what sorry, I'm rambling, but
Go on.
the green white variant, it was kind of a one-sided strategy, and on paper this looks similar, but it really isn't. This has the ability to alpha strike, and it can live through so much removal, and there's really neat things, as I noticed in your YouTube video. A lot of times and you were new to the deck at the time and stuff. I don't want to critique.
Yeah, I played 10 matches with it.
Right, but there were times when you're like, I don't know what I do here. I guess I just gain life and hope they concede. And it's like, no. With things like Doom Traveler and the Loyal Cathar, you just keep attacking, hoping that they block, because again, it nets you 4 to 10 life depending on the board state. And there's neat tricks like with Kor Skyfisher. You play it. A lot of people don't know if the Loyal Cathar is black, it's not in your graveyard. You return it, you pay 2 more white, it comes back down as the Vigilant white creature again.
Of course.
It's a really neat trick that a lot of people overlook. But one thing I got to caution people, if they're going to sleeve this up, obviously be prepared for a lot of pissed off opponents, but that's never stopped me. But you want to learn how to set your stops. And on Soul Warden, it's easy enough. But with Soul Attendant and the Suture Priest, you need to right-click and go down to this second to the last option, then right-click again and go to the top option. That's the easiest way.
Always yes, always yield.
Yeah, and it's funny. I feel ashamed to admit this. My friend Lightafite, the guy that taught me Magic, told me that, because for the longest time I was like, I just read it and I'm like, always yes. Oh, I guess it's a bug. It doesn't work. He's like, no, you got to do both. And I mean, I had been playing this deck for probably 2 months at that time.
Oh my God!
And I think I had lost 1 or 2 matches on time, and that would have made a big change. There was a time when I remember, excuse me, I remember when I was playing an Empty the Warrens deck. I think it was in the finals. I was 3-1. So obviously, if I lose, I don't make any money. And he knew, life wasn't an issue, time was. And so he cast out Empty the Warrens and just made like 50 tokens. He didn't have any more bushwhackers left, and he knew that because of the way I had my stops, that it was a great play. That it cost me the game, and sure enough, I died with lethal on the stack when my time ran out.
Did you look at my video playing Familiar Storm, playing this deck against Familiar Storm?
I don't think I saw that.
No, don't look at it. It's 1 hour and 10 minutes. It's I win because he doesn't have the time to kill me before he decks himself.
Yeah, that's probably the paramount reason I will, any sort of Fissure Storm mechanic is absurdly powerful, and I'm convinced it's the next thing to get banned along with Cloud of Fairies. I think if they did those two, it would be a much healthier metagame. But that deck, you have to know going in. It is your duty as a tournament player that it is a very valid option, especially against that deck, to win on time. And you have to start playing the time game the second you see that they are playing that. And
yes,
it's more real here. There's times when this deck actually has a pretty good. Excuse me, I'm talking too much. I'm starting to cough. Actually has a pretty good ratio against that, because imagine the scenario. You're sitting there and maybe at like 45 life, they stabilize, they bounce everything. Okay, they have maybe a flyer and a mole drifter, maybe a ground guy, so they can hit you for 4 a turn. They want to improve those odds, they have to cast creatures. But on your turn, you play a plains and you cast a Soul Warden, so they have to usually cast 2 or 3 creatures to get enough storm count up to justify going, recurring a temporal fissure.
Yes.
Thus netting you the life, and they end up, the net result, they hit you for about 1.
That was very clear in that match.
Yeah. Hey, let me take a break real quick and get a cough drop, because my voice is dropping out.
Pausing. Oh, now. One thing I want to talk to you about was a tournament we played in early September. I was playing Blue-Black Trinket Control and you were playing Stompy. And we were at the final table of Daily. We were both 3-0. And I beat you. And you were hesitant to the blue-black control deck because there were so many lands that came into play tapped. But then we kept talking, and you mentioned that I had swamps from different sets. And I was so ashamed because I knew that was wrong. So tell me why it's wrong.
Well, if you Google my username, there's an article on this that's pretty old now, but it's still very relevant. Back when I used to write articles, there is so much free information when you don't have matching permanents. It's incredibly important, especially your lands. I mean, imagine this scenario where a Stompy player has mismatching forests, and let's say they're about to kill you. Let's say you're a control player. It's their turn. They draw a card. Let's say they had no hand, right? So now they have one card in their hand. They let's say for some reason, let's just make it very simple, they use their Quarian Ranger to return a forest. And you notice that that forest is by artist Johnny Vaughn, let's say from Invasion. And then they think a bit, maybe bluffing some spell. And then they play a land by, well, maybe Dan Horning. How's that?
Yeah, that would look awful.
All of a sudden, you immediately know what they have. Now, that's an incredibly simple way of illustrating the point, but it's free information. It's a free duress, or Taxian Probe minus the draw. And there have been times when I've seen this happen where somebody will use a Skyfisher, or they'll bounce something with Capsize, and they'll play something else, and then they have the audacity to stand there and pretend like they're reading something, or that they have some, like, maybe I should use that now spell, and it's like, give me a break, you know. It's like, I know exactly what you have, you know. It's like, you don't have to be, you know, some crazy detective on it, you know. You just have to kind of make these little notes. When I used to play Deluxe Red, I used to love Gataxian Probe for that reason. I mean, good God, it's like, you better be playing a fast deck with Gataxian Probe, because I don't know, but for me, I write down every damn thing in your hand. I hope the interface soon comes out. I know I tried the beta client once. I'm still on the old one, but where it has the revealed cards, because then you can just check them off, and that is such a valuable tool. But I will go, you know, and I'll write down this, that, and the other. If I see 3 lands and they're all different artists, I'm gonna write what expansion and what artist it is, if it's foil or not. I've got little quick symbols and shorthand to do this quickly over the years of not wanting my time to go to waste. But it is one. I think people. I don't have, you know, the statistics in front of me, but I think people would be really shocked how many games that wins.
Yeah. After the game, I went through all my Pauper decks and changed it to the correct permanents, and that was really embarrassing.
You did it. You know, that's the whole point. You know, you get those people that favor, I guess, art collections over consistency, and they want to have a foil of this and a different art version of that, and it's like, well, I hope you do, because that's a lot of free looks at your hand.
Regarding the sideboard here, let's talk about some matchups.
Yeah,
and some cards that are not in the sideboard.
Right. This, you know, I haven't played this deck in a long time. I quickly I put myself in a scenario where you got 20 minutes, go, you know, and you're going to enter a daily with this, and I just might. I feel sometimes I get a kind of a wild card in me, and it's like, especially if I've been on a pretty good streak, which I have been with Hexchan lately. About 5% of the times I come away at least 3-1 or better.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you know, and it's back when I played Stompy. I remember there was one time it was just crazy. I just went on this run, and I'm not trying to boast. Everybody does this, but
it's all on mtgeostats.com.
Right. But I went through a phase where I swear I just could not lose with Stompy, and I think I had like 4 or 5 dailies in a row at 4-0, and my rating was like at 19 something, and I was like, good God, I've never seen it that high.
That's a high rating.
I wish it mattered, but maybe they could do something where if you stabilize a rating for a certain amount of time, they give you X number of entry fees waived or something. I don't know, but that probably only helped the grinders. But
it's too easily manipulated.
Right. with regards to the sideboard, so it's not set in stone. I think the main deck probably is.
I saw you removed Guardian of the Guild Pact from the main deck. Was that a cost issue?
It was. Me and my selfish, I should say my unselfish mana curve, I've got to have a damn good reason to play something that costs more than 3. It's got to be a backbreaker. So it was that. It wasn't as effective against, at the time I pulled it, the blue-black tempo-based teachings control decks were available, and things like Agony Warp were happening enough to where it was like, gosh, I need a, can't really use a bodyguard in that scenario because of, its protection capabilities. So, it wasn't fast enough to really race something like a Rolling Thunder off the top. Even with the life gain, it was 50-50, just a preferential thing, very valid to take out. If they ever come out with another sort of life gainer, you'd have to really give it a solid look against Suture Priest, which lost a lot of its potency when Empty the Warrens being gone. That being said, I played about 3 games with this in the last 4 days or so, and boy, Suture Priest, it makes you respect it. I mean, that thing nibbles away people's life. Before you know it, they're at 12 and 1 alpha swing with the Guardian's Pledge, and it's just over.
Yeah, he was very efficient against Temporal Storm, Temporal Fissure, Familiar Storm, when they try to do the Cloud of Fairies dance, and it hurts.
Yeah, it's very true, and that's the reason for like Icatian Javilineers in the sideboard is against any sort of comes into play tricks. As you know, 90% of Signal wrote a great article on goblins. I think it was called The Wrath of Khan with a Khan.
Yes.
For Channel Fireball about a year or 2 ago, and had a really interesting breakdown. I mean, it's very obvious that players play a lot, but I think it was a very fresh take on how inclusive 1 mana casting cost spells are in the format, how rampant and how powerful. And so I don't like the impatient side of me doesn't like the waiting around for Icatian to come online for a turn, but I can't negate that that's one of the only fighting stances you have against somebody that has a really good spell stutter draw, or like you said, is pulling a bunch of parry tricks and such. So there's that. There's the Frontline Strategist is another one that I've often considered. I have a deck similar to this. If you notice, most of them are soldiers, besides the cleric package, and that's a neat card too, because it pulls that morph trigger, and it acts as a prismatic strands on a stick that hits, which is always why I've liked Spore Frog and Stompy and stuff, because it's like, back in the days when Infect was viable with Invigorate and Stompy, I would sit there and you have your Spore Frog and it's another game of Mother May I. It's like, do you want to take 4 poison or infect counters? Okay, make it 7. Now I say no. It's like it's neat to have that instantaneous option on the board. And so the Crimson Acolytes are there, obviously. The Goblin matchup, and is it post? These are viable things with regards to like a bodyguard package. Keeping it away from capsize and stuff. You could get a soft lock. Realistically, bodyguard might be better there with the bodyguard backup. Usually they, especially if you get 1 or 2 of those online, I mean it's really over. So everything. What I'm trying to say is, other than the Prismatic Strands, maybe all 12 of the other cards come and go. I think the version you were playing had the Kami in it with the sacrificial effect. Very powerful.
Spore Frog in white.
Yeah, and it's an incredibly powerful effect. There's so many little white gems like that. One of my favorites, and I actually built a deck on it. I've never had the the strength to play it in a tournament. Was had Frontlines? Or no, it wasn't. It was Battlefield Medic.
Battlefield Medic.
Yeah, and exactly. Everybody said they're like, what's this? And I could hear you typing right now.
Yeah, I have to look at it. Oh, yeah, I remember this guy from Onslaught Leagues.
Yeah, and talk about your old school throwback, but this guy, when you have a bunch of creatures on the board, I have never seen a card cause more play errors than this one on my opponent's side. I mean, they throw everything at it, and did I say Which creature did I just tell you to look up?
Battlefield Medic, the one that counts the number of clerics on the battlefield and prevents X damage.
I misspoke. That is not the one. Let me apologize for the delay here.
No problem.
It's, gosh darn it. In fact, let me just load that old deck and I'll find it even quicker. Let's see. I've got like 8,000. Never mind. Get it to creature here. Hopefully edit this part out so we don't bore our listeners. Let's see. Oh, let me just write.
Field Surgeon.
Field Surgeon. That
Field
is
Surgeon.
a backbreaker. And I can see a lot of people across the world just rolling their eyes once they look it up and be like, are you kidding? This is one of those cards.
This guy was horrible in Ursa Draft. He was... he wrecked me so bad in Ursa Draft.
Oh, he wrecked it good. Okay, I thought you meant he was horrible. Like
no, he was really good, but I didn't realize that until I was crushed by it.
Oh, it is so. I'm so tempted. Realistically, if I was to play this deck, I would force a reason to have that either main or maybe a 2/2. It's so good. I mean, people just don't see it coming, and they don't. I mean, understand that the casting cost is free if you're sitting there playing against control and they cast an Electricity and you have 4 guys, all of them live. And there's not, I mean, it's just a free spell, and there's so many. I mean, you talk about combat tricks. I want to make a cleric deck or a battlefield deck and maybe just name it bandages or something. And, it's all about first strike tricks and using Field Surgeon. I mean, this guy, he's like CPR of the highest class. I warn you, there will be a 4-0 list in the next couple of years where I have this guy. He's just one of those cards that, like, if I had posters in my room, it would have him on it. Like, okay, next up, you got to make a deck out of this pretty soon, or this is a staple. And it's just so good. I mean, I realistically, he could take the spot of the Crimson Acolyte easily, but it's one of those things. I like him so much. I think I would just keep bringing 4 of them in every time. So why not find a spot main deck for him? You know what I mean?
Yep. Looking at the matchups, so I suppose you will probably be a favorite against most aggro decks, right?
Yeah, it's pretty easy to say. So things like, well, one thing you do have to consider, and something that a lot of Stompy players don't get enough credit to, is Shannon of Life's Roar, which is probably their only out if they have it super early against Hexproof.
Yeah, that happened to me.
Yeah. You can tell, and there's a very what's the free pay 2 life creature gets +2/+2 energetic growth.
Yep.
I ran that for a while in my hexproof deck because of things like that, where I could survive a turn and then reset and put all my enchantments on stuff. Incredibly powerful for that deck, but so there's things you have to look out for, but outside of that, and an incredibly fast goblin draw where you don't have any of your Soul Sister pieces out, it's pretty nasty. I mean, and again, against something like goblins or Stompy, I mean, who wouldn't want Field Surgeon? It's you prevent damage. They have to. It's a Mother May I again. It's like you're gonna cast that Groundswell. Okay, well I'll prevent just enough to make it just a complete waste of everyone's time, and you have to know that the neat thing about this deck is you're able to sit back and just feel the pressure build. It's like you can't kill me in enough time, and then the second I draw my Ace of Spades, the Guardian's Pledge, it's over, and there is nobody that sees that coming the first game.
True.
That card just, I've even considered there's probably 12 versions of that card that are sorcery based or whatnot, but in the end, you want that instant speed save all, and it's a few too many otherwise, which is an interesting thing, and deck brewers out there know this. But you look at any success with a deck, and you get the 8 ofs, and like in Goblins, you have the Mog, Sledder, and the Raider.
Yes.
They're the same card.
And the Cohort and the other guy, the Tutus.
Right. In this deck, you have the Soul Warden and the Soul's Attendant. In Hexproof, you have the Frog and the Elf. You have these overarching themes of very competitive decks that, hey, look, it's the same card. and there's a reason they're competitive, and they use that. So that's another thing when you're building a deck is to look out for is like, are there ways to traditionally play 8 of this? It's like, of course, it's only 4 and 4, but you get my drift.
Yes.
Consistency just goes off the chart when you do that.
Yeah, it's definitely a strength. So if you look at, for example, when you sideboard against Cloudpost with this deck, you're bringing in the Acolytes.
Right. Probably got the Suture Priest. Life isn't that big of a deal. You're not losing any tempo with the mana cost, and you know you're getting the protection. Depending on the build too, and the use of MTG stats, if their last deck is listed, which is a trick I'm very fond of using.
Yeah.
You know, depending on what you see, you know, 2 to 3 Prismatic Strands come in. Obviously, replacing. Tough in this scenario, you know. If you're on the draw, maybe you take out a land. That's a luxury this deck has. If you're on the draw, because you know you're getting that extra card, buys you a spot. Doom Traveler maybe isn't, you know. Of course, it's Electrickery bait, and after that, it's more Electrickery bait. So things like the Skyfisher and Loyal Cathar combo that I talked about earlier. And obviously, you don't lose Veteran Armorer because you know that's kind of a must kill if they want everything else to work according to plan. But you know, Bodyguard's a creature too I rarely lose because it's just a counterspell on a stick. You know, it's and it hits you for 1 every turn. I mean, could you imagine a spell that said pay 1 white and it just suspends, and it says for every turn this is suspended, your opponent takes 1 damage. And it's sacrifice this, counter a spell. I mean, that would be like, people would just be going ape over that. They would, you know, it'd be all over legacy lists for that matter.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people, when a new set comes out, they get this they get drunk with the new set. It's like, I got this because it's new. And it's like, with regards to Stompy, look at Wild Mongrel, and lately I have to admit, and I think it's because the card choices have calmed down a bit, people understand how powerful that is. Being able to change color, being able to return a forest when you only need 1 on the board anyway, and being able to do all these combat tricks. If that was printed in a new set now, oh my god, there'd be like 5 articles on every website about what the best common bear ever. Yet, since it's been out for a while, it's kind of the grass is greener scenario, and it's not greener, it's really green under the mongrel.
That sounds like Cloudfin Raptor in Delver lists.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're going against another red deck, such as maybe we shouldn't mention Burn here.
Yeah,
and that's just a nightmare for Burn. So
there are some decks that feasibly, if somebody, you know, offered you $100 for 100 matches, and you know you have to pay $100 if you lose 1, and you only get like maybe $5 if you win all 100 matches. That's probably a good bet.
Yes.
There's not much.
I've had the misfortune of being the Burn player against Soul Sisters in Modern, and that's pretty much the same deal.
And, you know, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was the catalyst for this deck. Was I was looking, and this is back when I was playing the green-white tokens, and I was looking at Pauper, as I often do when I'm tired of playing and I just kind of want to be the mad scientist looking at card choices. Every format has penalties for gaining life. The only thing Pauper has is Flaring Pain, and that's just about damage prevention. Nothing to do with life. There's nothing. Don't even worry about the search. I've searched, you know, every week of my life for maybe some wording or some phrase that it's not out there. And until it is, it's a one of those strategies. And since the dawn of Magic, you know, when people started, I mean, I started playing in 1994, and back with the Dark.
Oh, same. Exactly when I started.
All right.
The Dark had just came out. Revised was the set. It was the core set.
Yeah, but even back then, when somebody at the local, you know, kitchen table or whatever was playing a life deck, it was like, okay, you just want to slowly lose. And there's an ingrained culture into that, where just like with hexproof creatures for the longest time, it was this newbie strategy, I should say, where no serious player does that. When I started looking at how respectable it was and how much virtual tempo in the form of life and not needing to block or whatever that this deck has, crazy. And now with the absence of Invigorate, which obviously it wasn't that hard with the Prismatic Strands and so many critters to block, but there were times, if they had like a Apostle's Blessing timed right, you're obviously messed up. But now that's gone. Now Into the Warrens is gone, so I should say Grape Shot. So your sideboard is just so freed up, and maybe there's a spot for a card like Remosian Rally against extra insurance against post when they bring in those electricaries, or they think that they removed your veteran armor and now they're going to kill your whole team. Nope. Tap one creature and stop everything. Good stuff.
Good stuff. Looking at specific sideboarding then, if you're taking in the Javilineers, for example against Familiar Storm, what are you taking out there?
Well, actually, against Familiar Storm, I would bring in all 3 Prismatic Strands, because that's the biggest clock grabber of all, because you're always discarding because they're returning things. So even in their best case scenario, let's say you don't hurt at all, they return every single thing you've got, you're going to discard a Prismatic Strands, play a white guy at the beginning of their turn. If they do anything, or if they wait till they attack you, tap your white guy and you prevent everything, thus causing more time lapse shenanigans. So actually, with the it's interesting point you brought up with Fissure Storm, as popular as it is now, I would probably play 4 Prismatic Strands, and people would always think, that's got to be against really aggressive decks. It's like, no, it's against quite passive decks, because it's rare that you're going to pay the 3 to play it, but that time that it buys you is going to be invaluable, and as is the life when you're playing those creatures, as we discussed earlier. They have to, bounce the thing. They have to get their engine going, and that nets you 3 or 4 life. And as you know, it's usually only a Mold Drifter or 2 that are attacking you every turn.
Yep.
And gosh, if they have the Kervix Torch package, it's like a big deal. You just counter it.
What's coming out?
What was that?
What are you taking out of the deck?
Oh, for I would think probably maybe your Skyfishers. Just for the loss of tempo they add. Obviously, Cenn's Enlistment, because if you're playing that, you should have won already.
Yeah.
I mean, these are things that you have to look at objectively. It might be a card that you like, or it's one of those things, but that's not the right kind of deck that you want that against. Even Veteran Armor. I mean, you could conceivably come up with a package, because I can see that being a problem deck where. Maybe you even have Mana Tithe as a sideboard. There's plenty of room. I still don't think Patrician Scorn's the way to go. I just threw that out there as kind of an eye-opener to people tuning in for this. Oh, I've never heard of that card. Hey, maybe that'll help me here and there. But there's Remosian Rally, the Mana Tithe, which can, again, it seems like a really silly card, but it's so situational. And show me a deck that won't cast its great spell when it gets to that threshold against White Weenie. It's going to happen. You're going to get a great counter out of it. So, and then even the second time, it's like, well, he played 1? That must be who's going to play 2 of those? And it's like, well, maybe this should play 4 of them. I don't know. These are questions to be asked, but I would definitely bring those sides. And always, if you're going to tinker around with this deck and make your own brews, look for things that do the same thing that the spell does with a creature. And White has some of the best creatures around, and there's usually an option for that. That's the same logic that goes into a Spore Frog or the Kami of False Hope. It's like you could play a Holy Day, or you could hit every turn, and play a Holy Day. So there's a lot of value based in creatures.
Oh. I think one thing that I like with your way of thinking about Pauper is that you are a brewer, a true brewer, and there are a lot of brewers in Pauper, but there are very few brewers that actually get good results. There's like a community of brewers and a community of tournament grinders, and they seldom
hybrid.
Yeah.
Well, that's the. I guess I've just gotten really lucky for about 7 years.
Yeah, you just top decked your way through the whole format.
Yep, that's me.
Well, I think we are done with White Life / Soul Sisters, and I want to thank you for giving us your tech.
For the opportunity.
Thank you.